You know, this is shock doctrine on steroids. And if he declares a state of emergency and acquires 130 some odd new powers, what will he do next? How will he use this to go after his enemies? And I was pointing out that this is a guy who actually does go after his enemies. On Monday, Gavin Newsom, the new governor of California, pointed out in his swearing-in speech that Donald Trump was incompetent, and Trump turned around the next day and cut off FEMA funds to California, or at least declared that he was going to. That's like, you know, yeah, I'll really make people hurt. Trump is all about making people hurt. This is like at the core of his life. He was hurt all his life, apparently, by his father and his mother. You know, they sent him off to military academy because he was so troubled. And then during the summer, when he would be home from military academy, literally every summer, his mother went to Scotland, where she was born, where she grew up. And as a now wealthy person, she had left Scotland as a very poor woman. She goes back to Scotland and plays the part of the, you know, grande dame without Donald. So here he is, you know, without his mom, and you know, his dad is just this brutal racist guy, and he's all screwed up. And so all he's got is basically hate and fear. And I mean, this is played out in a big way down on the southern border. If you look at the policy of separating children from their parents, that's a brutal, vicious policy, devastating children literally for the rest of their lives. When you take a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old and you put them in a cage for what? It's been 100 and some odd days, 120, 130 days now since a federal judge said you have to reunite those families, and they're just ignoring him. They don't care. And these children are going to be wounded for the rest of their lives, and their parents. And so now here we have this, a mother from Guatemala. This is Gabe Ortiz writing about this over on the Daily Kos. A mother from Guatemala, identified only by the initials LJ, who was separated from her 2 children after entering the U.S. in May of 2018, is talking to the press. And in court this week, this is, you know, Trump rips children, infants, from asylum seekers, right? And puts them into facilities where the employees have on multiple occasions been arrested for sexual abuse of these very children. Some of these kids, when they get out of custody, are so afraid that they literally hide in their closets. They literally, or they won't let go of mom. They have to constantly be with mom. They can't sleep in the dark anymore. I mean, it just goes on and on. We're talking serious psychological damage inflicted by Donald Trump and Kirstjen Nielsen and John Kelly and Stephen Miller and Mike Pence. And these guys all justifying it. In court this week, now this is where it gets real interesting. In court this week, this is from the piece by Gabe Ortiz over on Daily Kos. The Department of Justice attorneys representing the administration in a lawsuit filed by a group of mothers separated from their children claimed that the U.S. has no, quote, constitutional duty, end quote, to pay for any mental health counseling for immigrant families, and they want the lawsuit thrown out. Michael Hess, the DOJ attorney, said the government does not owe a freestanding duty to provide medical care to former detainees. And Gabe just lays it out, you know, the audacity. We piloted and then officially implemented the policy. We stole your children. We threw them in cages. We threw you in one, too. We didn't even bother to note who was stolen from whom. Federal agents mocked you while they did it. We're still violating the judge's decision, ordering the return of these children to their families. And actually, we're still separating families. But if you've had a rough time with that tough S word, in a truly just world, Gabe Ortiz says, not only would the victims of zero tolerance have all the resources they need to heal and restart their lives here, but they'd also see the perpetrators locked up. 170 days past the federal judge's reunification deadline, children are still being separated from their parents and still separated from their parents. 170 days out. A half a year. For a 5-year-old not seeing mom or dad for a half a year, living in an institution, living in a cage, that's huge. So what impact is this having on America more broadly? And this is, I think, a huge issue. This is an amazing study that was just published. It was in the online journal, or the educational journal, rather. It's called the Educational Researcher. And it's a peer-reviewed publication. It's a journal of the American Educational Research Association. And what they found was, prior to the 2016 election, there were no meaningful differences in bullying and teasing rates among children in schools. No meaningful difference between Democratic and Republican localities. They examined a Virginia statewide sample of more than 155,000 7th and 8th grade students across the state's 132 school districts. The study was conducted by Francis Huang, an associate professor of statistics. So before Trump was elected, the bullies were bullies, right? In Democratic districts, largely Democratic districts, and largely Republican districts, it was about the same rate of bullying. What is it now? They looked at this in the spring of 2017. It took them, apparently 8-9 months to get their research vetted and peer-reviewed and everything else so that they could publish it. So this is a study that was actually done almost a year ago. And what they found in the spring of 2017, that would have been just a few months after Donald Trump became president, after he was sworn in, that bullying rates among middle school students were 18% higher in localities where voters had favored Donald Trump than in those that had supported Hillary Clinton. Similarly, student reports of peers being teased or put down because of their race or ethnicity were 9% higher in localities favoring the Republican candidate, not at all higher in those localities favoring Hillary Clinton. In other words, the whole mentality, the whole mindset, this whole brutal, vicious, angry, punitive mindset that is reflected in the daily behavior of Mike Pence, Donald Trump, Kirstjen Nielsen, John Kelly, now he's gone, but he was the one who set a lot of this up, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, gone also, but now it's Kevin McCarthy. All these people who are all these white people who are supporting this god-awful behavior have now set the tone for the nation. And our middle school kids are picking up on it. An 18% increase in bullying in those voting districts, in those areas where Donald Trump had high levels of support. And a 0% increase in those areas where Hillary Clinton did. And Virginia is, in the rural areas, it's very, very red, and in the urban areas, it's very, very blue. And there's not a whole lot of purple in Virginia. I lived right next door for 7-8 years when we were in D.C. So here we see that the president's, this vicious mindset that Donald Trump has established as president is not just echoing through his government, our government. It's echoing all the way down to our middle school kids. This is a tragedy. This is more than a moral outrage. This is more than a crime. And he wants to say that we've got a crisis on our border? The mendacity of that is just breathtaking. We'll be back with your calls in just a moment. It's 15 minutes past the hour.